going to start to talk about one of our last constructs that defines structure programming, and that is loops. Okay? Now, loops, the good news about loops is they're very, very powerful. All our problems up till now have been sort of what I call baby programs. We can't repeat them. Every time we want to run the program multiple times, we have to rerun it ourselves, and this is not ideal. Okay? So, we are going to learn the different ways of, pick these up. We are going to learn the different ways of doing loops. And we're going to learn some syntax, and we're going to learn three different leading decision, trailing decision, 3 or 4 different kinds of loops. Okay? The bad news about using loops is that the loop that is used the most frequently is the most challenging to set up correctly. So that's where we're going to focus, if that makes sense. We have 3 loops that are pretty easy to use, 2 loops that are pretty easy to use, and 1 loop that's pretty tricky. And we're going to spend most of our time on the tricky one because that's used most frequently. Okay? So let's look at some of this. Understand that a loop is going to allow a program to repeat. Pretty much going forward, every program you use will include a loop. Because you don't want to run a program once. You want to run it until you decide to get out of the program. Okay? So here's some of the terminology that we're going to look at. A loop is what we call repetition. Another word for this is repetition, repeating things. They're in all languages. And, as I mentioned, pretty much most programs are going to include some type of loop construct. Okay? Now, the 2 parts of a loop that we're typically always going to have is we're going to have a body of a loop, and this is the part that gets repeated. So I want to show you what I mean by that. So the body is a code that we've already written. So we can take any program that we've already written and we can turn that into a loop. Okay? So it may be several lines, it may be 100 lines. It is whatever the algorithm was that we previously got working. Okay? Now, in order to make this a loop, we add a control statement. And the control statement has a true or false value. Okay? If the control statement is true, it means we do the loop. If the control statement is false, it means we exit the loop. Okay? So we have 2 fundamental kinds of loops. Let me put the screen up so people can see the picture for a second. We have 2 fundamental kinds of loops. One where the body follows the control statement, and one where the control statement follows the body. And let's try to understand from a big picture standpoint what the difference is. Now, we call this picture a leading decision loop for obvious reasons. Why do we call this a leading decision loop? Because the decision leads the body. Okay? And we call this guy a trailing decision loop because the decision trails the body. What do you think the difference is in terms of how this one executes and how this one executes? Tyler?
The leading checks the statement.
Yeah.
And then it runs the program for the if it works.
If it's true, it'll run the body.
And then the other one will do everything.
It does everything at least once, and then it checks. Okay? So that's the fundamental difference. So the minimum number of times through this body, well, let's do this one first. The minimum number of times through this body is how many? Once. We always go through the body once. We always execute the code once. Okay? That's a trailing decision. The minimum number of times through this body is 0 because this may have been false and we never enter the body at all. Okay? Now, most of the time we're going to do this because sometimes you usually give the user the option of not repeating. Okay? You ever gone into the wrong program by mistake and want to just get the heck out and not have to enter 20 things, right? So generally, most problems are leading decisions. And the loop we use for this is the while loop. And as I mentioned, this is a little trickier to set up correctly, okay? The loop for the trailing decision is called the do-while. And this one, while easier, the good news is it's easier to set up. The bad news, we use it less often, okay? Because most of the time, we want to give the user not the option of not having to go through the loop, okay? Now, we also have one special loop. So there's 3 loops. I don't know where I was coming up with 4. The other special loop we have is the for loop, which is done for counting. And most people like that loop. It's fairly straightforward, fairly cryptic. It allows, but that's special purpose, and we can't use that all the time. So those are the 3 loops we're going to look at.